Hello, this is Lou Ventura, CFI candidate at Big Sky Aviation, located at the Millville Airport in Millville, New Jersey. Today we're going to be talking about ground reference maneuvers. And our lesson plan today is turns around a point. And you can find that information here in the Practical Test Standards booklet written by ASA for the FAA. Okay, I'm also going to hold up for you a figure. And this is the figure from the Airplane Flying Handbook. Okay, and this is Airplane Flying Handbook FAA-H 8083-3 Alpha. Okay, so this is the figure that I'll be talking about today. Okay, so you ask yourself, what is a turns around a point? So turns around a point is doing a couple turns around a ground reference that you pick out. And you want to be able to maintain your altitude. And your bank is going to be changing because your effect on the wind effect on the aircraft is going to change your bank angle at different times. Because when you're heading away from the wind's going to be behind you. So when you roll into into the bank, your first bank will be the steepest bank, and then when you go into the wind, it'll be a shallow bank, or maybe not even a bank itself. Again, this is all relative to the wind, and the reason why us CFIs teach this to students is basically the objective is, as with other ground reference maneuvers, is to help the pilot develop the ability to subconsciously control the aircraft while at low altitudes. Okay, and he needs to divide his attention between the flight path, the ground reference, and watching out for other traffic in the vicinity. So there's a lot going on here. He's keeping his eyes outside. He's looking at the altimeter, make sure he's at between 600 to 1,000 feet above the ground level. He's looking at his airspeed. So there's a lot that's going on here for the student pilot to get his ability and skill level up to par there. Um, so another thing too is the FAA sets some standards too. They want to be able to say, okay, the student pilot was taught by the certified flight instructor. He's up to par. He knows what he's doing. And the standards that the FAA is looking for is that the student has knowledge of the elements related to this ground lesson plan, or to this lesson plan of turns around a point. He needs to select a suitable ground reference. Okay. Now another thing too, when you select a ground reference, you've got to keep in mind that you might have an engine problem. Okay. And if your engine fails any time there, you need to be able to look around and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to put the airplane down here. We have an engine failure. We have to land. If you don't look at a ground reference and it does not have a suitable landing area, if you have an emergency, then I advise you not to do that. Okay. The other thing is, now I'm talking about standards here, is that he needs to plan a maneuver as to enter left or right at 600 to 1,000 feet above the ground level. Okay, it doesn't make a difference as long as the wind is behind you. Okay, and he needs to apply adequate wind drift correction at all times to keep that constant radius turn around the selected reference point equidistance. Again, he needs to divide his attention between flying the aircraft and keeping his eye on the ground reference that's below him also. And the FAA also wants you to maintain altitude plus or minus 100 feet. And you need to maintain airspeed plus or minus 10 knots. Okay. Now, it's commonplace too also for students to make errors. I mean, we're learning something new. We're not really sure how it's done. We might talk about it on the ground, but then once you get in the air, it's totally different because you're in the aircraft. There's a lot going on. So you're constantly checking for traffic. You're looking at your instruments. So your mind's busy. There's a lot there. And what we see as CFIs as some common errors, and again, this is all commonplace for the student, is they have a faulty entry technique. They don't enter the correct way. They don't clear the area properly. And what I mean by clearing the area is any maneuver that's being done, you're out there in airspace, you might have conflicting traffic going by. You might even have cables are out there from different wires. You might even have the telephone systems there. So you have to make sure that, because you're at 600 to 1,000 feet, so you need to be sure that in that airspace that you're doing this maneuver, that area is clear, that you're not going to cause any conflict to anybody, or you're not going to, hurt yourself. Okay, so what we're talking about here is the common errors that the student might be doing. So we're talking about the faulty entry techniques. Poor planning, orientation. He's not dividing his attention. He needs to have appropriate bank angles doing this maneuver. Maybe he might forget about the wind. He's not dividing his attention again between inside the aircraft and outside the aircraft. Uncoordinated flight controls. He's not using the rudder correctly into his banks and his turns. Forgetting again where the wind is located or coming from as he goes around the reference point. He's not maintaining altitude or the airspeed. So there's a lot that's going on here, again, in the mind of the student pilot. And as the CFI watching the student, we see that these common errors are commonplace again for the student himself. Okay, all right. So that basically wraps up, the who's, what's, and whys of this lesson plan. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put up a figure and walk you through it to kind of give you an idea of what's expected. Okay, so I have the figure up here, turns around a point, and how to. And we're going to discuss how the turns around a point is executed. Okay, this diagram has a little flaw on it though. The wind arrow, see that wind arrow there on the left-hand side? It actually should be on the right-hand side, behind the plane that has the steepest bank. So there is an error here on this diagram. But not a major one. All right, so the first thing we need to do is to establish an altitude, either anything between 600 and 1,000 feet above the ground. And you need to also be sure too that you're about 500 feet above any obstructions, and that you're not doing this over a congested area too, like a school or a hospital, something like that. You need to, again, in any maneuver, you need to clear the area. I have to emphasize this. It's very important that you need to clear the area so you're not causing any problem between you and another aircraft or you and an obstruction. Okay, so select your point on the ground that you're going to be doing. It's either crossroads or a house or a clump of trees or a silo if you're out in the farm area. Okay, so you pick your maneuver there. You need to enter this maneuver downwind. So again, with the figure, you'll see if you replace that wind arrow behind the steepest plane, that's where point number 1 should be. Okay, so step number 1, you have the wind behind you, you're immediately going to roll into your steepest bank. Okay, again, that's going to give you the highest ground speed, and it's going to give you a good equidistance around that ground reference maneuver. Okay, so you're going to roll into a bank when to beam the reference, and again, any significant wind is going to give you the highest ground speed. Now, step number 2, you're going to go into a shallow bank, and again, this is all a wind correction. If you stayed in the steepest bank and the wind's behind you, you're going to be you're not going to make this an equidistance around the circle. And again, this is all keeping a equidistance around that reference point there. Okay, so when you head into the wind now, that's going to be your shallowest bank. Again, it's all relative of how much wind is going to be there. So your downwind turn is going to be your steepest bank. Your downwind to crosswind, you're going to gradually decrease to a medium bank. And your crosswind to your upwind, you're going to gradually decrease from medium to shallow bank. And again, from your upwind to your crosswind, you're going to gradually increase from shallow to medium. And then from your crosswind, you're going to crosswind to downwind, you're going to increase from a medium to steep bank at your starting point. And again, this gives the pilot the ability to understand how wind is affecting him. And again, this all kind of leads up basically to the commercial maneuvers, and also helps the pilot also do a good traffic pattern. And he's crabbing into the wind, and he's making corrections for that wind, because just like a boat in the water, the water controls the boat with the currents, and we are basically the same thing too. The air currents and air velocity also controls us in the airplane itself. Okay, so we have position 1, 2, 3, and 4. We have the steepest bank again on our entry point there. We have a shallow bank, be step number 2. Step number 3 would be the shallowest bank when you have a ground reference point when you start at your steepest bank. And then again, you're going to have a steeper bank on position number 4 as you roll into that position there. All right, well, this concludes the ground lesson plan on turns around a point. I hope this information was helpful, for you, and made make you understand the maneuver a little bit better. If you have any questions or comments, I would appreciate if you could leave them for me. I would love to answer anything, or if you have any feedback, it would be great for me. All right, thank you again, and see you soon. Take care.